Good morning, Joel. I'm very honored to welcome you to this conversation, someone that I so much admired and I followed over so many years. You've been an international, very respected consultant and engineer automation and a speaker and on organizational structures and you wrote these wonderful three books that I've been reading over the years. That I'll show them in detail later on, and I always felt that I could have started in a cave with these three books, and after reading them, I could have been much than ready for approaching all sorts of situations in life. And so I'm so grateful, and I've been willing to interview you for a long time, and I thank you a lot about this opportunity. Very honored to be here with you.
Well, thank you, Alejandro. It's been a long time since I saw your face, and even though we have spoken some on the phone a little bit over the past few days, we I had forgotten so much of your presence. Although I have the pictures of your sculptures, which retain for me a great deal of your presence and remind me of who you are. But when enhanced by your speech and your face and so on, it's just a great joy for me to realize not a new connection, but the continuation of the connection that we always had. And it's just a great joy for me, even without your fulsome compliments and so
No,
on. No, I love compliments. What can I
no,
tell you? I'm human, but
thank
uh,
you, of
it's
course.
it's a great joy to be connecting with
Yeah,
you again. So thank you for making this effort, and I
yeah.
hope we will continue.
Thank you very much. So, you know, I always have you in my heart as a mensch. You know, like a person very balanced, very positive. With this idea, with this very important Jewish idea of simcha, I always remember you as someone who expresses all the time simcha, you know, like this attitude, no, and in relation to your professional achievements, I always felt that you were someone from within the system, but also from outside the system, or you were like a, you know, like preparing the interview these past days, I was this phrase came to my mind: a pyramid demolisher, and which you know but you propose a new structure for that demolishing. So it's a combination of um, no, you exercise a combination of questioning the pyramid structure, but you proposed a very interesting alternative, which I've been um, relating over the years with the Kabbalah studies. I've been finding a lot of connections between the ideas in your books and the Kabbalah teachings from the old Kabbalists. So, in a way, you so half an organized scholar and technology expert, but also half a mystic, because it seems to me that you were working within organized structures, but the ultimate message or goal was to emphasize the individual, the mystical approach, the anti-organizational approach. So it's very interesting, because I don't think the solution is to, not solution, but I don't think the alternative life is to be completely mystic or completely a world person, but an integration of both, no, like a dialogue between both, because
Yes.
in order to approach, we need to have some balance, which is also always the unbalance. No, it doesn't exist the balance. It's always being unbalanced, but that's the balance. No, but dialoguing between the two sides. So I mean, some words that before.
We won't pursue that into dualistic and non-dualistic and that rabbit hole where I have not begun even to scratch the surface of Kabbalah. I'm only, I read a lot, and I am a great admirer of people who think and who are connected somehow with God and with love, because the ultimate value for me is love. It's the connection between human beings and the holiness of the individual soul, and as a reflection, as a representation of God, and that those are the things that really interest me. And because my mind is very scattered, it goes to many places, sometimes to the consternation of my beloved wife Dalia, because I make a joke in the middle of a serious conversation, and it's a break state for her. It's hard for, she says, "Don't do that, don't do that." I don't get the joke, and I don't, and I have to, slap myself and say, her mind is different from my mind, and I learned so much from her and gained so much from her. I need to be a little more considerate of her. It's like with our discussion of time zones this morning, I should have been a little more considerate of the fact that we're on different coasts and so on. But so I love your thoughts and their expression, and the fact that a major form of your expression is through sculpture, but it's not in ignorance of the strictures and structures of scientific reality and the perceptual, there are lots of philosophical words, but they don't always mean what one intends for them. But the notions of perceptualism and empiricism and so on, these are important ideas, and I see where people have taken them, and but I feel I think I should probably put the period there. I feel I feel more than I think, and And so that's where I'm coming from. And so for me, language especially, and I include in language not just words and different languages, but uh, bodily expression and plastic art and music and so on. These are just ways of trying to find the points of resonance among people so that we can touch that place where, you
Sure.
know, in a poem of Yehuda Amichai, an Israeli poet, well-known poet, uh, somebody quoted to me a line that I had missed in his poems or hadn't remembered recently, which is, in the field where we are right, no flowers grow. And that really struck me because I remember in my youth, I can blame it on my youth, uh, being right, knowing the way things are, and this is the truth, and so on. And it was such a comforting feeling to know what's right, everybody else is wrong, and so on. And it took me a while to grow out of that. But I love this place so much better, where rightness is, it's like I remember other feelings and situations of my childhood. And just as I look on my children and grandchildren, and now on my 15 great grandchildren, and I take great joy and pleasure in every one of them, in every moment of theirs. And my wife is the same way. Uh, she has four grandchildren here in the area in San Francisco and in Berkeley, and she has started to tell their parents, I am Savta, I am grandma, and that means you can't criticize me. And so you can tell your children what they can eat and what they can't eat, but when they come to the magic world of Savta's house, they eat whatever I tell them, whatever I say. And uh, and that's such a beautiful thing. And I watch them rejoicing in this world that she creates for them when she is there. And I think it's just in right proportions. And I feel similarly of the magical world, for example, just as an example of Kabbalah, that what a place of joy and gardens and beauty and color and uh, integration of a sort that is impossible to put into words, but it's at a whole other level than most people are generally living. I subscribe to a book service, well, to several, but one of them is a series of podcasts, science fiction podcasts, and this one story that came out just a couple of days ago was about, um, the name of the story had in it, uh, I'll think of the word in a moment and I'll share it with you. But it was the same day I had started learning on the guitar a song by Nat King Cole from the 30s, uh, about uh, about, it's not about a metaphor, but it uses the metaphor of the galaxy, suns and stars, for a love affair that he was involved in. And the chord sequences are very jazzy, yet very gentle. so they take you to places you don't expect to go, and they take my fingers to places they don't want to go on the guitar, but the sounds when I can make them are wonderful. But these both came back to my life. Well, one came back, the other appeared on the same day. And that synchrony, that since time, you know, we don't know what time is or what it means or anything like that, but still the notion of things happening at the same time, like sharing a numerical value or whatever, these things are just, they're hints. They're little flashes. Perhaps it makes me think of the sparks of creation that we are here when, you know, from the breaking of the elements from Lishboret HaKelim.
What you were saying about, yeah, and then you mentioned the Hebrew, the it's a coded language, no? It's incredible, the Hebrew language.
Yes.
It's
More and more for me, more and more. It's so wonderful, and I was blessed to be given it without much study, just a little bit, just by virtue of living among people who speak Hebrew all the time, and so
it's a combination of poetry and mathematics, no? It's
yes, and most of it unconsciously so, but it's all there. You can find it there very easily, and happily, many people have spent a lifetime or many lifetimes concentrating on it and bringing this all out. So you can go as far as you want with it. But, I think, like you, if I can presume, am more on the intuitive side in it. I've I've gone a little ways into mathematics, but I don't. That's not. I don't see that as the core of anything. I see it as observations. Also, that of course they coincide, they harmonize, and but words like harmony and resonance are, for me, at the core of these issues, and they touch upon all the things that you were referring to. And I see it in your art and in the contrast between the hard and the soft and the pointy and the soft, the cloud-like, the more, the everything being an expression, not so much of precision as harmonious totality, which is not completely accessible to us. So I sometimes think of animals who can see their visual system can see ultraviolet or infrared, and I think, what is that? What is it? It's not like another shade of green, another shade of blue. It's something else. It gives a different depth. And I think, wow, maybe when I leave this body, I will have access to those things as well. And that seems to me a great joy.
it's the infinite, the matrix. It's fascinating how we are just some very specific interfaces, no? But we are not the only ones. There are other interfaces that we don't have access.
That's right.
So,
but even that has purpose. It has meaning, and it's what we have for what it's worth. It's the Alejandro view of the universe and the Joel view of the universe and Karina.
Completely, yes.
Yeah.
Different and similar. And So Joel, how structure is destiny came to life? The idea of the Dandelion model. It came out of an intuition, some revelation, or some thinking.
It's very simple. I have, I would say, I think I have a low coefficient of originality. That is, the ideas that I come up with are almost exclusively imitative. I have a profound love and desire for metaphor. For the, I read one time a long time ago. When I was first studying artificial intelligence in the late '60s. Somebody said the basic function of human learning is like, that characterizes all of human learning. Everything is built on, what is this new thing? Well, it's like something else. And so from that, we progress to other things. And of course, that progression doesn't always make sense to everyone who hears it, but it's at least one important way of adding knowledge to our basis of knowledge. And so
the idea of the fractal that one sees.
Well, yeah, that's that is a lovely representation of it also, but more basically, there was a very in fact, it was the first real bestseller business book called In Search of Excellence by Tom Peters. And Tom and his partner, whose name eludes me right now, they wrote this book together when they were at the McKinsey consulting company, and Barnes and Noble and other bookstores at the time. They had a bookshelf of business books that was about this long. And when In Search of Destiny, In Search of Excellence came out and started to sell many more copies than any other business book had ever sold, then suddenly there was a flood of business books, and now business books in the dying bookstores constitute typically a whole room of books rather than just a single shelf. But I read this book together with my late wife, Nomi, whom you met, I believe. And her insights about it were what led me to this understanding of the dandelion and the pyramid and so on. Because she said, he talks about In Search of Excellence, but he never tells you in the book what are the characteristics that apparently bring about excellence. So he brings several well-documented examples, but he doesn't do the work of generalizing from those examples. And she pointed out to me, she said, the difference between the companies that he identifies as excellent and those that he identifies as lacking excellence is in the organization. The companies that he has identified as excellent, which gives them what it takes to grow and to live and to move forward, rather than periodically collapsing and starting over and so on, is this issue of structure and control. And so from there, I came to these notions of the dandelion and the pyramid as being just evocative examples of the sort of thing that I'm talking about. And you notice that if you say dandelion to most people, it it doesn't mean anything if they're a little bit oriented towards their yard. They might recognize this as a pain in the neck weed. And I think I mentioned in the book that French for dandelion, dandelion clearly from the Latin comes as the tooth of the lion, but dandelions are denigrated in most languages, including the common term uh, for dandelion in French is pissenlit, which means pee in bed, wet your bed. And children in France, play with each other, putting a dandelion into bed with one of their friends, and haha, this will make you wet your bed at night. But everything has meaning. All the meanings connect. Nothing stands alone, or nothing has characteristics that are independent of all the other characteristics. And we get a very limited view if we try very hard to taxonomize it all and to make it into sharp, clear categories, and as though this categorization can somehow capture all of the power of whatever it is has to offer. And it just occurred to me right now that the area of my doctoral studies in math is called category theory. And it never connected in my mind with this notion of the weirdness of taxonomizing. And in the world of computer graphics, where I spent so many years, initially we would make pictures which were very unconvincing, because in the digital world, which it just happened to be materials of convenience, we could easily make things out of rectangular shapes, out of pixels, but only when the pixels, our ability to manufacture materials and processes that would give us a great amount of density of those, were we able to begin to emulate just a bit the smoothness of color, the smoothness of shading from one color to another. When you look at the evening sky and you can't tell where the boundaries are of there are no boundaries per se, and yet up here it's dark and blue, and down here it's purple and magenta and all these things. And even these words are only just labels that we staple to things to just give us some indication of what's going on. And so the notion of resolution, and then so from the word resolution, I easily go into the semantic concept of resolving. What is to resolve? It's to take it from here and bring it to there. I was in a Talmud class yesterday, and we were talking about a portion in the Talmud in which the rabbi's argument, because the argument is the essential form of the advancement of knowledge, they were in an argument about justice versus accommodation. And one rabbi, a great Rabbi Eliezer of Talmud Times, said, there can be no settlement of a court case. If you're settling, you are insulting God, because God gave us this tool of the judgment process. And granted, human beings are faulty and only can do what they can do. But we have the Torah on which we can base, and we can reason from the Torah and so on. So given that we have these tools that we all, I don't want to say worship, but we have these tools that are clearly so functional and so easy to use. And since clearly the Holy One gave us these tools, how could I go to my opponent in the law and say, you know what, let's save time and money, and I'll take $50 less, and you can have $50 more. And if that's agreeable to you, let's just settle this. And if the other guy says, okay, then both people go away happy. So some rabbis said, well, peace between two fighting bodies is certainly a great mitzvah. It's certainly an expression of God's peace and love. But Rabbi Eliezer said, no, it's ignoring what God provided as the way to find true justice. And that's when I thought again of that line from Yehuda Amichai's poem, which says, in the field where we are right, no flowers grow. and so this notion of accommodation, of moving from one to the other, extremes and absolutes, seems to be not clear in terms of its accommodation of, for example, the values and beauties of the, for example, of the Sfirot, and seeing that these different levels are not terribly clear in their separation, and in fact, it's their similarities and the ways in which they blend and can be just different views of reality that growth happens. So all of that, it seems like the pyramid and its role of absolutes makes no place for that. So can it work? Of course, the pyramids endure to this day, the ones that the Egyptians or the aliens or whoever built in Egypt, and the ones in Mexico and other parts of South America. These not only did the structures endure, but they're the things that they represented in terms of the way people relate to each other in the hierarchy, which, if you read the business literature and the organizational science literature, then we find that human beings don't do well with sharp edges. You know, if I'm working all the time with pieces of broken glass, I cut myself very quickly. And okay, maybe that's my goal, to cut myself and pour my blood into the work, but not usually.
Well,
In order, In order for it to be life-sustaining, we need soft edges.
Yes, yes, but also if you have many sharp edges, like in the Star of David, that we'll cover this in a few minutes. But the pyramid freezes time, no? But when we see now, we are looking at the dandelion, and well, I put only three flowers, but they have much more. So we jump from one to the other. And so in that sense, we are moving. We are not freezing time.
That's right. And also, just like you were saying earlier, that our limited visual spectra, the fact that we don't see beyond a certain amount of purple, but beyond a certain amount of red in the two frequency directions of light, constrains our approach to other things. And we can know that those expanses exist, even though we can't hear them. There's an American expression, dog whistle, that something is a dog whistle. It means something that you blow the whistle, dogs everywhere pick up their heads because they hear it. Well, all the humans around means absolutely nothing to them, but for the dogs, it's very serious. And if we would know more, as we're learning more now about the world of smells that dogs and other animals exist in, again, it's an entire universe that is very difficult for us to grasp. And today, dogs are being used for diagnosing cancers, specific ones, because they have different smells, and they can say, oh, this one has it, and it's a melanoma. It's not this kind of thing. They don't have the words, but if we can translate their reactions, then we can gain a bit of the benefit of their increased understanding. So when we look, as Tom Peters and his partner did in Search of Excellence, and they began to distinguish between those companies that seem to always survive disaster, that seem to grow more empowered leaders, and to have in general more life-affirming qualities than other organizations. It tells us something, and that struck me very strongly. And that's where those issues came from. And so it's not my idea, but
yes,
it's my pictures.
So Joel, as you see, as I've told you, I've been making this relationship between your ideas and the Ten Sefirot, no?
I didn't either, but now in recent years I've begun to observe that. But that's not where it came to me. I think all good ideas are in some sense homeomorphic.
Yes, there are interpretations. Interpretations. We may have to. Maybe that's the most we can do in this life. Leave some interpretations. Some smart, some silly, some. We are passing by and leaving interpretations. But this idea, I found this idea. You mentioned that the projects, this area of a company or a group of people or an individual, no?
Yes.
We have this organization of the dandelion being organized for for the fruit of these projects, no, like
Yes.
different projects that they have a certain life. They start,
Yes.
they develop, and they die, no, and then other projects, like having families, no. We have a family, then they have family prolongs and so. But you mentioned in the book that the projects were short term, and I started to think, well, what about the long term projects? Because and when I placed the dandelion here with the Sefirot, I found out that this upper area, no, Chokhmah, Binah, Keter, belongs more it's more related to the long projects. So, so this, this is intuitive, no? I wanted to listen to your opinion. These projects, each dandelion, each team has short projects, but they have long projects as well, no? I mean, the whole thing has a long project, and I was curious about listen to what if you have anything to say about this.
Well, Leon Trotsky, not one of my favorite people in history, but he was a smart man in many ways. And he said, every man is surprised by old age. And I know I have been. I'm 75 this year. And when I think of that, inside, I'm not 75. I'm no different than when I was 16 or 10. I was thinking this morning about something that happened, and I figured out it must have been when I was 10 years old. And I realized that the thought processes, although not as informed by experience and the passage of time and so on as they are now, they're the same processes. I'm not greatly changed from what I was at that time, and so it just reminded me that my point of view is very limited, the human point of view. And when I think about the extent of time and time going by, and we talked a little while ago about your daughter being 21 and so on. And I remember not much after she was born, that, and I have, as you know, a bunch of children and grandchildren and so on. And I'm in constant amazement as to their scope, what it means, what the world that they grew up, and this in itself is not a very original thought. You can find in literature as well as in science plenty of analysis and attempts to comprehend what that all means and to generalize from the particular of a single life into the generality of a family, into the generality of a nation, a country, a group of nations. And one of the reasons I love so much science fiction is because good science fiction authors think in much larger terms often. And one day when I was quite young, somebody said to me, of course, science fiction is important because look how Jules Verne foresaw the submarine. And it just occurred to me, and I said, no, he didn't foresee it. He invented it. And then other people read Jules Verne, and they created the submarine. We can't say who foresees, is it a paranormal observation outside of time, or is it an invention? Is it something that takes that form? And so you're pointing out the scale as being a very important factor, like in so many other things. When we think, well, what does it mean if I floss my teeth? Flossing your teeth is a pain in the something. It depends how you approach it, depends how obsessive compulsive you are, and if you have some notion as to whether scraping the bacteria out from between your teeth is going to be useful to you someday. Well, I have a lot of surgery in my mouth to show that there was something lacking in my understanding of the long-term aspects of flossing and other forms of dental hygiene. But this of course applies to everything. And happy is the person who is able to absorb these lessons while they're cheap and not have to go through dental surgery to comprehend them.
It's a mystery how we run into these insights in different times in life. Why they are so they have different times, and we can't get them all together at the beginning. So
it's true. And in an organization that is working towards a common purpose of some sort, translating that into actions that can be done daily and into sharp boundaries when appropriate and into softer boundaries when more appropriate. And seeing the results of those things requires a form of transcendental vision.
yes, yeah, you are talking about this. You've been talking a little bit about this relationship between Hesed and Geburah, no? The,
yes.
the giving and the restriction.
Yeah.
Giving and the restriction, no? It's a constant dialogue, no? And sometimes we are more Hesed, and then we balance with Geburah.
Yes, more rigidity. Yes.
I always like the example of that a teacher of mine, Mario Sabán, gave once, that when we are grabbing a glass of water, let's say, we are exerting a force to, like let's say a hesed to grab it, but we need to restrict it in order to properly grab it.
Yes.
So it's Hesed and Geburah at the same time. It's the same energy, but a different type of graduation of the energy. Because if you have two Hesed, you throw the glass to the floor. If you have a lot of Geburah, you can reach it.
Right.
So it's just the graduation. And well,
when I think of the first sculpture of yours that I saw, which you named Aleph, and I often think about that and its shape. What I see mostly is the edges, the sharpness, and of it. And then I think about Aleph, and I think about the traditional script as it became, starting off as sticks and then working into smoother shapes and so on. And to me, that is a representation of that transition between Gvura and Chesed. But even the words Gvura, which means boldness or braveness or definiteness, and Chesed, which means grace and lightness and softness, these are emotional words. They're not usually used for shapes or for construct.
But in good art, you find these forces interacting a, in a proportionate way. So you know that the artist is manipulating them.
Of course.
Even unconsciously. It doesn't need to be conscious, but when you are in front of a good work of art, you feel it. It's like and I don't think you need to have a lot of knowledge. It's a feeling. It's a feeling that why when you see an arm, the different parts of the arm, you recognize that it has a wisdom, a proportion, the functionality of the arm. It's the same with a piece of art, and
absolutely,
and that's why when many people ask, why, how can you say that this is good and this is not so good? Maybe you can't explain it, but you feel when something is well built. And because we have this knowledge in our own body, in everything, we have the proportions inside. So we recognize when something is well proportionate, when the forces are interacting in a wise way. I don't know how to express it.
Yes, and the Buddhists say sometimes when one of the teachers that I listened to is named Joseph Goldstein, and he talks about skillful application of an understanding, and the issue of skillfulness is very important in these teachings, because it's not casual, it's not just intuition, but rather there can be good intuitions, there can be not so good intuitions. And if explanation itself doesn't mean anything, as my late wife pointed out to me one time, if you want to get an explanation, ask a 5-year-old. So if you ask a 5-year-old, why did you do this? And they'll say, because, and then the story that follows is really wonderful. and some people don't forget that ability, and you can ask them why, and they'll tell you, I think the moon was full that night, and so who knows? Cause and effect is such a something we don't understand.
Yes. So let's go to one of another book of yours that.
If I can take 5 seconds to grab my tissue box from the
yes,
other.
yes.
So that not having been 5 seconds is just a reflection of my respect for the motility of time.
Yeah, don't worry.
Excuse me.
So 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 we are looking at these graphics that I've been making. You wrote this great book, The Simple Secret of to writing a nonfiction book in 30 days at 1 hour a day, and I found it very potent, and you talk about these two structures, this rhomboid and the cluster technique. And it came to my mind this idea of materializing something that is, well, commonly named spiritual, but which is going on here in this triad, the Keter Chochmah Binah, which is closer to the infinite. So here you post the question, and you suggest to fill the squares with different subjects, which are going to be in the future the chapters of the book. But the direction is going from from the question to the answer. So I associated with this constant circulation in the tree of life from Keter to Malchut and from Malchut to Keter. It's a going down and up, constantly going down and up. But mostly I found in the Kabbalistic teachings that mostly they emphasize the circuit up to down, to materialize the spiritual, let's say, as a more Jewish mechanism. The idea of the cluster, it's I associated with the Star of David, no, and also I've been recently reading about this technique that it was developed in Israel, the EMDR.
Yes.
No, it's an
Very familiar with it. Yes.
You know about this, about unblocking trauma. And
I'm trained in it.
And I did some exercises myself. And when you move your eyes, I think this technique is basically, I mean, the very simple explanation, going from right to left or left to right, and some other steps. But
that sounds like a description of current politics in Israel.
Yes, well, that's a way to go, to jump from one to the other, not to get stuck. But so the Star of David, you have this situation where you are jumping like a monkey, your eyes are jumping from one point to the other. The same with clustering. The contrary would be the pyramid, no, where your focus point is in that vertex. So when you meditate, focusing in one point, what actually I think, this is my take, you are controlling through the thinking with thinking, but you are still in the loop. But when you mind wandering, you trick the rational mind, and you are able to access the non-rational mind. But it's through the eyes, like so. I found that these two ideas, very potent, and with the relationship with some Kabbalistic concepts.
That's a wonderful idea.
Then I like to talk a little bit about this third book of yours, the Every Man a Hero, Every Woman a Coach. And it has a very strong relationship with the structure of the Sefirot, no? Where you have the right side, the masculine, the left side, the feminine, and this constant interaction between the two. They're the same energy. It's the same energy, and we see that it's the same energy the Kabbalists, they explained this hundreds of years ago as the same energy, but with different intensities. So they started to encircle themselves, and they created this situation where this big explosion happened, and which is now understood as the Big Bang, you know. But they already described it in the Kabbalistic text, certainly in the 12th century and before too. So I found that I also relate the idea of the book with the what and the how, and with the non-dualistic idea of an integration of both, not just an emphasis on one of them, because it may appear that there is a slight emphasis in the hero, but to me, I found that it was not. When you read the book, you find that this circulation is very, very alive and potent too.
I liked the idea that Joseph Campbell defines in his book, The Hero's Journey, which has been adopted as a universal trope in the world of literature, as being something that comes from beyond our normal psychological understandings of human motivation. You know of the writings of Joseph Campbell?
I know, yes, I know
of
some.
of myths mostly, and so on. And so the idea that the hero, he lands here on Earth with and he finds in his pocket a little note saying, "This is your job, should you choose to accept it," like in Mission Impossible. And this is what drives the hero throughout to go and rescue the maiden and slay the dragon and so on, and return in victory or in failure sometimes. And so this notion of hero, which was before, I think, Campbell's writing, was viewed as a very restricted a kind of, Achilles, or a strong person who does bold actions and so on. King David, before he was king, slaying the giant and so on. And but I think Campbell had a more nuanced understanding of this idea of hero, that it didn't come from no place, but it is something that is observable in many people. And the notion in my attempt to understand and going through, I was married. I am married for the third time. The first one was ended by my wife because of my lack of understanding of what was going on and what she needed from me. And so she decided she wanted to leave after a fairly short time. My second marriage was a little longer. It was 33 years, and my first marriage lasted 7 years, and in my hubris, I quickly translated that into how David spent 7 years on the outside and then 33 years in Jerusalem. And so my second marriage lasted 33 years and ended with my wife going on to her next assignment. And so far, my present marriage is still going, but I may have overstepped the bounds of my metaphor there. But the seeing these periods of time and understanding that they, like everything else, have meaning and are a lens through which to look at structures. I was looking for a structure that would that wasn't pyramidal for a husband and wife or two partners. I'm not particular if the husband and wife are the same or different genders, or that's another issue entirely, which I leave to bigger heads than mine. But the idea of the no implicit superiority in one position or the other, and that I think resulted in a lot of misunderstanding, and especially among women, thinking the man is a hero, the woman is a coach, and that the coach is somehow inferior, whereas in my view, the coach is far superior, because the coach has to have a view of the potential. That's definitely a superior view and a greater understanding. I didn't make that clear enough to be a lasting image for people.
Chokhmah without Binah, Chokhmah without the translation into reality, it's nothing.
Exactly.
So, exactly. So it's like when maybe it's wrongly understood that artists, they have a lot of imaginations, and imagination, it's fertile if it's materialized. Otherwise, it falls into a fantasy, and a fantasy without being anchored, developed. It's a fantasy. In imagination without being anchored, it's a fantasy.
Yes.
So fantasies, they evaporate.
Well, sometimes yes, but then there are artists like Tolkien who took his fantasies and turned it into a beautiful expression.
Yeah, and he materialized it, he wrote them.
Yes.
So yes, it's the same energy, no? It's the same energy that one controversial issue is that when Binah thinks that she could operate creating her own chokhmah. That's something that it's something to be studied. Instead of copulating for real with chokhmah, many times Binah, the rational mind, builds her own intuitive mind, but it's still within. It's created by Binah. It's not the real chokhmah. Binah could sometimes it could be tricky. Binah could create expansive questions, but they are not the super expansive questions. They are expansive questions that they were manufactured by Binah. So this has a lot to do that with other a couple of subjects that I like to talk with you about this excess of Binah, of the rational mind, um, with the actual situation of the artificial intelligence and the attention situation that we are going through, the economy that is started to be more and more powerful around the mind. So to me, there's something that the way I see the macro picture is that there's some disconnection of the of unbalanced of the rational mind that in some way, I don't know why it's stopped to copulate with the irrational mind, with the intuitive mind. I don't know what happened in the last decades that the unknown is not seen as something interesting to dive into. What do you think about this? I mean, why so much emphasis? I mean, from your engineer point of view, no, and from all your understanding, why this excessive emphasis of the on the rational, on the development of stuff, on the packaging of stuff, instead of being more like I think in the 50s, 60s, 70s, people were more prone to, they were excited about connecting with the unknown.
I think
what's going on? What's going on now?
Well, one angle through which I understand it is there are many cycles in I'll call it social understanding in approaches to things. And this year, our refrigerators are all square. A few years ago, they all had rounded corners. This year, you can see very similar shape trends in fonts, that is, shapes of letters. And they also reflect some trends, more towards the smooth, more towards the sharp, more towards the ornate, more towards the simple, and that these are cycles. And I don't know what they mean per se, but I do know that they move through the culture. And so the palette of colors for this year's new cars, and of course they're all commercial interests, and so these colors are secretly agreed upon in the automotive industry in particular, as well as in the clothing industry. These are well-known things, so that this year's green is different from last year's green, and so on. And to me, these cycles are they're cycles. Look in a pool in which there is life and motion, and there are different cycles at different times, and we can observe them. I don't know if we can really understand what is the result of winds, solar winds, what is the result of gravity waves, what is the result of electromagnetic phenomena, what is perhaps the result of forces that we haven't yet recognized. We know that we can now observe things at atomic and even subatomic ranges, but we don't know of the relationship between the subatomic and the intergalactic. And we don't even know if we really ought to be embedding the intergalactic in a larger frame, and we don't even know what that means. We can imagine, because of our, perhaps language gives us this imperfect way of moving from one scale to another. Why this happens or what it means to us, I really don't know. Since I've given up being right, I feel much more like a traveler, an observer, one who can appreciate all of God's creation and what, and I'm sure there's beauty there that I have yet to see, and I prefer to see beauty. I prefer to see that which chooses life, which supports life. You know, I very intuitively, when I was 19 years old, chose to change my kind of simple Polish name, Filler, to Ol, which in Hebrew means light, of course. And it was, there was something for me that I felt that light was very important and much more representative. I didn't call myself darkness. Perhaps to others, darkness would appeal. Dalia and I had a long discussion just the other day about Yotzer Or Uvore Choshech. Are you familiar with that prayer?
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the one of the daily prayers, and it means maker of light and creator of darkness. Now, that is unusual locution for a Hebrew speaker, because Boré is reserved to things made by the creator, and means to create. Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, not yatzar, but rather bara. And so I looked it up in some rabbinical references, and of course I found you can, it's very hard to find a question that no rabbi ever asks. So it's not difficult with computers to find the question that you're now asking. And this, so what is this about, Yotzer Or? How can you create something that is the absence of something? And the answer is sort of Kabbalistic in terms of what I read, which is that the word Boré, when you say to create a forest, this is understood as meaning to clear a space for the forest. And that for that you use the word to create. So
you empty the space.
yes, yes. And of course, emptiness is very important to understand in Kabbalah.
Yes, we need to constantly empty ourselves. Yeah.
Yes.
And in the micro and the macro. And well, you were answering the question with the idea of appreciating also the oscillation, no? Because well, now it's like this, tomorrow is going to be the other way, but it needs to oscillate, no? The times and the approaches. Well, now is very rational. It's, I'm sure it's going to be an oscillation. In the future, it's going to be more towards the unknown, no? And the,
perhaps, yes.
I mean, no, there are different periods in history.
But even there, linguistically, much as I love language, I think I'm growing more painfully aware of its limitations over time. paradoxes don't come because things are paradoxical, actually, that something is and is not. It's a function of language. We
Sure.
created a language that is limited. And so,
Mm,
Russell's paradox is I am a lawyer. All lawyers are liars. Therefore, if I am a lawyer, then I'm not. And if I'm not, then I am. It's not because there's a problem in creation. The problem is in language, and we haven't managed to
exactly.
avoid it in any known human language, as far as I know.
Yes,
And
yes,
uh,
yes.
so
That's yes. When we're talking about the interfaces, no, the systems, the languages, there are many are yes. We have a lot of binary structures that they are
yes,
determining
yes,
how.
yes,
That's why
which are
that's why I don't know in depth Hebrew, but I I have the idea that Hebrew have it's not so binary the structure of Hebrew, so it invites you to think in a different way.
indeed. And many things in Hebrew, many words, there are some words in English, for example, to cleave means to cut, but in the traditional Christian marriage ceremony, you say you promise to cleave to one another. It means to be joined. And so this has gone beyond Hebrew. In Hebrew, it's much more common to have things that are both this and that.
Uh, so Joel, this I wanted to share with you something that I found very intriguing lately. That since you were one of the pioneers, no, in 3D modeling, no, in the 70s, you founded a very important magazine, no?
And a pioneering um, what's the word, paraclete, that's from Christian theology. It's a word for the Holy Spirit, which means one called alongside to help. So I'm not an originator, but an observer.
Sí, sí, sí.
Help.
So I wanted to show you this relationship between the number 26 of the tetragrammaton, no, the
Yep.
uniform name of God, and then and this 26 in the cube, no, because we have the square number, we can calculate the 25, we can calculate the cubic number,
Yep.
the surface, the volume, and then we have the extrusion, the 26 in between, which can't be calculated. And I found this fact in this book, The Mystery of Numbers, by this Kabbalist from France, Marc-Alain Wangin. And it happens that I made this relationship between the extrusion and I asked myself why the extrusion needs to be perpendicular. If time makes everything to change constantly, why the extrusion couldn't be tilted? And if this could be if this could make some sense, we can relate this diagonal with the diagonal of the tilted bab from the aleph, and this diagonal from the aleph is very powerful because it's the liminal space which can be calculated, not like the 26. I mean, this connection between this 26 and this diagonal.
Yes, I understand.
And I wanted to share this with you and see your opinion.
Now, why did Fermat say it's a unique number?
Because the 25 it's the square of 5, and the 27 the cube
Cube of 3.
of root 3. But the 26, he said that it can't be calculated. He challenged mathematicians on those days. Nobody could resolve it. And it happens that the 26 is the gematria of Hugh Hey Bab Hey of the
I understand, yes.
And when we extrude the surface from A to B, I ask myself why should be perpendicular? Well, I know it's a language, it's a convention, but also someone could say that it could have many angles. Why 90 degrees? If time if time can't be defined, it could be any type of angle.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to.
It's a wonderful thought. I want to share that. I have a friend in our synagogue who is quite a student of Kabbalah, and I want to, if it's okay with you, I'd like to
Sure.
share these thoughts with him to see what his thoughts are about it.
Well, thank you very much. I'll be looking forward to how this evolves.
Yes,
Opinion.
indeed.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. The meaning of numbers, you know. Pythagoras was quite a mysticist on the meaning of numbers. And although his first ideas of cosmology in terms of number of planets and so on did not quite make a good description of reality, they did for what they were able to see at the time. And so that in itself is a growth in Chokhmah that has led to Binah, and so that's something else.
Yes.
So I'm fascinated about this, but since it's totally new to me, I don't think I have any useful thing to say about it, but I like it.
Okay. We'll see how other Kabbalists what they think about it.
In Mishlei, in the book of Proverbs, it says, "As iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the face of his friend."
So Joel, what are the? I mean, what are the new technologies that puzzles you that you find exciting and also or preoccupying?
I am I'm playing with that currently because I went through some neurological challenges that affected my thinking abilities and my communication abilities for some time. By the grace of God, I'm making my way through that. And so now I am once again, I just got hired by an old friend of mine who was a competitor for many years. And now he asked me to join him and do more consulting back in the area that I thought I had abandoned forever some years ago. And um, so I am both surprised and not surprised by the path that technologies that I've been involved with have taken over the past few years, and both surprised and not surprised by the breadth of thinking that have accommodated these technologies. For example, I'm just started playing with the open source versions of AI that are now creating these somewhat controversial texts and so on, the abilities. It seems like the Turing test has already been satisfied. You know, the Turing test was a test by the great um, computer scientist Turing. How can you know if the thing you are conversing with over a teletype is a person or a machine? And the test was, if you can't tell by the questions that you ask it, by the answers that it gives, then that is an adequate, a competent aspect of artificial intelligence, because another, like they say in court, no independent judge can tell the difference between the answer from a person and from the device. And so here we have all these coming from Google and from Microsoft and other sections. It seems we've passed that milestone. Not really. I think it's like saying, in the 1700s, there was a chess robot that was created that would beat all the chess masters, and it turned out to have a dwarf inside who was a good chess player. And so right now, I think that's the stage we're at with artificial intelligence. And a public speaker needs a lot of good jokes to keep the audience interested. And so I always used to say that I think that artificial intelligence, it's a mistake to invest too much in it, because we haven't done all that much with real intelligence yet. And so we can't claim to be authorities about artificial intelligence. But it's a fascinating area. I don't know if you've read about or maybe encountered one of the milestones in this sort of artificial intelligence was a program created by an MIT psychologist called ELIZA. And this was at a time when the Macintosh just came out. And it was a cute little box, and any program had to fit on a 300K floppy on the drive. And yet this program, ELIZA, was a psychotherapist. You would tell ELIZA anything, and ELIZA would recommend so on. And people spent hours and hours and hours, and perhaps they derived psychotherapeutic benefit from it. But it was a program that was, I think less than 200K in size, and yet seemed to have all this capability. And we haven't really plumbed the depths of what that means yet, what it means to us to have intelligence, or to feel understanding, to feel understood. And, that's a whole other topic, but that is an area of interest to me. And it relates back to this notion of harmony, because harmony includes the notion of resonance. Resonance is a physical and electrical and philosophical notion of transfer of energy resulting from harmonizing frequencies. So an opera singer can produce a tone that for a piece of crystal, this is not crystal, for a crystal glass has the same resonant frequency, and so it causes it to vibrate until it breaks. Or a group of soldiers can go over a bridge in a frequency that causes the bridge to vibrate to destruction. These are functions of resonance, but they are also functions of energy transfer. And we haven't really explored this. There have been stories about it, but I haven't read anything convincing where by using low acoustic frequencies, we can affect the ability of people to control their bowels. So, you want to stop an attack of soldiers, you shoot this frequency at them that causes them to lose control. It makes it kind of hard to keep fighting if you're losing control of your bowels. And of course, famously, recently, the Cubans were accused of using high frequencies to affect the thought processes and other things. And a recent report came out that no, that didn't happen. I have no confidence in that report, nor in the initial reports. I think we just don't quite know yet whether, they were fed something chemical or whatever, or whether there are other forces being engaged. Larry Dawsey is a famous doctor who is engaged in numerous well-documented experiments with prayer. And in praying for fields of grain and showing enormous, irrefutable differences between plants that were prayed for and plants that were not prayed for. Huge differences. There's a famous, I think he's actually a sociologist, and his son also works in this field, that found the phenomenon of monkeys on one isolated Caribbean island learning something that monkeys on an island hundreds of kilometers away, when they learned it, these monkeys started doing it as well, with no communication between them, no of any kind, nothing passed between them. The other monkeys just started doing it too. What does that mean? Did the fish take the message, or it's so we don't know. But
no constraint of distances.
Exactly.
They communicate from far between places far away from each other.
Well, we come to every situation with our preconceptions, with the limitations of our knowledge. These are things we just may not know about yet, and we are very quick to refute anything that seems to not match that. And then it takes a long time. This is famous in the understanding of scientific progress and so on.
So it seems that we are ending our conversation with the big unknowns. So this is very promising. That
Yes,
there are a
I
lot of
I
things.
hadn't thought of it in that sense until you mentioned it before, and mentioned the shift between the interest in the unknown and the lack of interest in the unknown. And I think that's partially a function of hubris, you know, unknown. What? Not me. I know everything. I have access. I have access to the internet, so I know everything. And that, of course, is so silly and so childish. But you know, anyone who has lived with a 5-year-old knows what it means.
We want to grow, so we need to keep the child for the unknown in order to grow a little bit. So we need
Absolutely.
to throw
Yeah.
ourselves into the unknown. Well, Joel, thank you so much about this conversation, and I send you a big hug, and it was very interesting to listen to your ideas.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alejandro, for making this conversation possible. I've enjoyed it greatly, and enjoyed your ideas and your thoughts and your own syncretism, which I think is very consonant with my own, about these combining of different ideas to make new ideas, which is so important.
One day, remember one day, I don't know when it was this, I was trying to remember, 1980 something in Buenos Aires.
Yes.
I read a little post, I don't know where, that someone was coming to give a talk on virtual reality. And I went directly to listen to you. I was 20 something, and I didn't think about it. I had to listen to you, and that's why when we met, and I I didn't know that I was going to follow you so many years through your books, and learn so much. So it was a really a command. I had to go. So you don't understand these things.
I fully understand that, or at least I think I fully understand that. But I do accept it as a form of resonance. You know, something in you is spinning at a common rate of revolutions. There's something spinning in me, and it has many aspects of it. I have an Argentinian friend here locally. He's a little older than I, and he's a very experienced physicist with a lot of experience in lasers and so on. And he loves poetry, and he's introduced me to a lot of Spanish poetry that I was familiar with formerly. And one of them, which I told myself I was going to commit it to memory, but I haven't yet, is one that you may know called El Arpa, the harp. And I'll send it to you because
Okay.
it's a beautiful poem, and it speaks of resonance, and resonance is what we have. So that's a good thing.
So yeah, so the Dandelion also, no, it's a pro resonance.
Yes.
Small projects that they create resonance.
Yes.
But
Yes.
maybe that's the big project, no? That's a big to create resonance.
Yes, I think so. I think so. And the
thank you so much, Joel. So we
thank
keep
you
in touch.
very good.
Thank you.
See you soon, I hope.